because every comic has a story, and I'm not just talking about the one in between the pages. It's time for another edition of Slabbed Stories. This one stars my favorite comic book character of all time. Do you want to see who it is and you want to hear my story? Stick around, I'll show you. Today's edition of Slabbed Stories is a story about loss, love, celebration, and surprise. It revolves around a key issue that any collector would love to have in their collection, and in this grade you can certainly see why. And this also happens to star my favorite comic book character of all time. But I'm not the one who hunted this comic down, and I'll tell you, everybody who I tell this story to, their jaws drop. And you'll see why in just a moment. The book I'm going to spotlight for you tonight is not the first copy of this book I've ever had. No, my first copy of this book I had purchased back in 2012 off of eBay. I knew it was a low-grade copy, and when I sent it into CGC, it came back a 4.0. To be honest with you, I was more than satisfied with that. I was just happy to have it in my collection. Again, it was my favorite comic book superhero of all time. And it was something I looked at and I always said, you know what, when I'm a little bit older and I'm doing a little bit better, of course I'll get myself a higher grade. Fast forward about 2014-ish, let's say, I had a very close friend that needed some help. And they were in a very, very tight spot. I'm not going to go further into details. And no, I don't speak to this person anymore. And this story, by the way, has nothing to do with that. Maybe a little bit, but nothing really to do with that. So, looking in my collection, I didn't have a whole lot of cash on hand. I said, you know what? I'm going to sell this book. And again, I always intend to replace it back. And this person had said to me that they were going to give me the money back pretty quickly, so I figured it would be a quick exchange. My LCS, Fat Moose Comics, who I've spoken about before, had just had a change in ownership. And I went to the new owner, brought a couple books with him, and this was one of them. And we discussed it. We agreed on a fair price. I'm not going to disclose that here. Long story short, no longer friends with that person, and I'm out this book, but I did get that money, and I did get my money back, yes. If there is a silver lining to that part of the story, I will say that the LCS owner, who was Scott at the time, put up the comic for a raffle, selling tickets, and the proceeds did go to help a needy family in the area. I do remember that, so there's a good kind of silver lining there. And yes, I did buy a ticket to try to win the comic back. So fast forward a couple years. During this time, my wife and I were engaged, and I was starting to talk to her more and more about my comic book collection. She had joined me to my LCS on a few occasions. I had shown her some of the key comics in my collection, and I forgot exactly how the conversation came about, but I said, you know what? This one particular comic is one that I want to add back into my collection. If I'm not mistaken, I actually had a picture of it on my dream board, believe it or not. And it sparked a conversation, and I had to tell her, well, I had it, and this is why I had to get rid of it. But I've always said to myself, I'm going to get this back in a higher grade. Every now and then I had checked eBay and looked it up, and I saw that the price of this particular book had been steadily climbing due to the popularity of the character, not only inside the comics, but also in the films as well. And it started to become more and more of that book that maybe I would never own again. It felt like it was getting slightly more and more out of my reach. A couple more years go by. My wife and I get married, and this was about 2 years ago. It was my 40th birthday. A couple weeks, I should say, after my 40th birthday, to be precise. We were supposed to go to a graduation party, or so I thought. And I'll be honest with you, it was a Friday night. I was tired. I had a long day at work. I was cranky. I really didn't want to go. And my wife said to me, look, let's just go. We'll show our faces and, mingle a little bit. And if you're still tired, we'll go home. So I said, okay, great, fine. So we pull up to a banquet hall in my hometown, the Hanover Manor, and walk in, and we open up the doors, which I was kind of thinking, why are the doors closed anyway? You don't usually see that for an event. And lo and behold, my beautiful wife had thrown a surprise party for me for my 40th birthday. And and we just had a great night, a lot of celebration going on. But the real surprise came. It was either right after we got home or the following day. My wife said to me, "Look, I have one more present for you." And I already said, "Look, you took me out to dinner for my birthday. You threw this big party. I don't need anything else. This is perfectly fine." She said, "No, no, no. You're going to want this." And that's when she dropped this on me. So that's right. My wife got for me Hulk 181, the first appearance of Wolverine. We'll say the first full appearance. I'm not going to get into the whole cameo and full argument here. With a pretty high grade, 8.5. You know, like I said, I had a 4. I would have been happy with a 2, to be honest with you, but at 8.5 blew my mind. Now, my wife knew very little about comics. She was kind of surprised by the amount of money that this was, and you know, she won't tell me how much she spent, nor do I really want to know how much, knowing how big that book is, especially now. She went and proceeded to tell me that she first tried to contact a gentleman who at the time worked at my LCS, and because they're not Facebook friends, the message just kind of went into Facebook Messenger limbo, wherever it goes. So she never heard back from him. Then I think she told me she reached out to one other source, but I forgot who, but that didn't pan out either. So she had gone to Amazon and she was looking at different issues or whatnot, and she started noticing things like it would say Hulk 181 high grade, and then if you looked really close, it would say facsimile or poster or this is not the comic, or I think there was even one in a foreign language. So luckily she did luck out on getting this one from reesesrarecomics.com. And look, we both got lucky. She rolled the dice. And in fact, as soon as she gave it to me, she's like, "I need you to go to CGC and authenticate this. You need to tell me if this is a real comic, if this is an actual comic." And I did, and lo and behold, we were both very happy that it was. This is my favorite. This is not only just my favorite comic. This is a gift from my wife. So this is not some. This is something I will never part with. Something I will never give up. I told my wife, because I do have several key X-Men comics, especially. You know, the only time I would really consider selling these is if we were to get ready to purchase our dream home, or to some kind of a higher goal, if you will, between the two. That was my episode of Slabbed Stories tonight. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, please go ahead and throw me a like, share this content, or subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. Do you have a slab story that you want to share with me? Go ahead and leave it in the comments. I would love to hear it, and I would love to discuss it. Do you like this segment? Because I have a whole bunch of slabs I'd like to discuss, and a whole room of comics I'd like to discuss as well. I hope that you certainly enjoyed it, and I hope that you certainly enjoy the rest of your day, your evening, your afternoon, whenever or wherever you may be watching this. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. Peace, love, and comics. Good night.